Hey there, good people. Big Heavy here, and don't worry, I haven't accidentally wandered into OnlyFans. Not that there's much of a demographic for doughy 40-something-year-olds that vaguely resemble gorillas when they don't have any clothes on. I do have a bathing suit under here, and instead of talking about that sort of thing, today we're talking cold plunges. And I recently finished up a DIY cold plunge based on the Grizzly cooler. There's a whole bunch of videos on how to build these things, so I'm not going to do another how-to type video. What I am going to do is give you a couple of minutes on why I chose to build one of these things, what benefits I've seen so far, and then kind of give you some tips and tricks as to my cold plunge and some of the things I learned along the way. And I'll put a complete build list down in the notes below with all the parts I used. There's a few little tricks that I found along the way that I haven't seen with other things, so that might be worth checking out if you're thinking of building one of these things. And with that out of the way, let's jump in here and talk more about why you might want to consider building yourself a cold plunge. So here I am sitting in 46-degree Fahrenheit water. I'll put whatever that is in Celsius down below since I'm not smart enough to do that conversion in my head. But if you've never gone into water at this temperature knowingly and willingly, that's kind of what cold plunging is all about. It's going into exceedingly cold water, and the obvious question, if you haven't thought about this before, is why might someone want to do this? And aside from one of the key factors, at least for my demographics, of sort of the holy trinity of bro science endorsing cold plunging, what I've experienced, and it kind of mirrors some of the science out there, so could be placebo or could be actual benefit, is a few things. First of all, I think something that's hard and arguably somewhat painful, although obviously not in a long-term damaging sort of sense unless you spend way too much time here, but it's kind of a way to get out of your comfort zone and do something difficult on a daily basis. I'm quite lucky and quite happy and blessed and thankful, and all of us relatives, that I lead a pretty wonderful life. I don't really want for anything. I've got food on the table. I've got a great family around me. I've got a roof over my head, all that stuff. And that's all very good, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. But I do think there's some value in having to do something hard on a daily basis. And there is science that kind of says that your brain kind of develops this ability to do hard things if you do them consistently. And then when you're faced with some challenge in life, whether it's something work-related, a hard project, or it's something much worse, having this ability to kind of be calm and to deal with something that's frankly not that comfortable, I think is an asset. Some of the other benefits I've experienced personally is I'm a runner, as you've seen in some of my other videos. Part of running is you get a little bit of soreness, you get some joint pain, you get some sore dogs, all that stuff. And typically you talk to a doctor, you talk to someone like that, they'll tell you to ice up those barking joints and that sort of thing. Well, essentially I'm spending 6 minutes in here, in the equivalent of a big old bag of ice. And I think I go in the plunge, maybe feeling a little creaky, feeling my joints a little bit off. I come out of the plunge feeling much better, and that kind of decent feeling stays with me. I find when I start out my runs, everything's moving a little better, feeling a little better. Combined with stretching, I think this is hopefully going to add a few extra miles, a little bit extra life to my muscular and skeletal system. Final benefit that I've actually heard from multiple people and found it to be quite true myself is the plunge helps with sleep. For some folks that may not be a problem. For me, I have the typical kind of adult tossing and turning and difficulty getting to sleep sometimes. I wouldn't say it's terrible or anything like that, but it takes me a little longer than I'd like to fall asleep at night. And for about 10 minutes after I get out of the plunge, I almost immediately start feeling a little bit tired. And it's hard to describe it. It's a good tired. It's the tired you feel if you went out and put the hard workout or something like that. It's not the mental exhaustion or had a few too many drinks or I can't wait to get out of work sort of tiredness. It's like hey, I've just kind of physically, put some good effort in today, and my body's ready to kind of give its rest at the end of the day. So that I do find to be a good concrete benefit. And for my routine, I sit here for about 6 minutes. It's also a nice time to kind of relax. I'm in the garage. I'll usually flip the garage door open and kind of watch the clouds. you're sort of mentally focused on the fact that your hands are tingling, your body in some way, shape, or form is saying, hey, this sort of sucks. So you're not sitting here daydreaming. You're in the moment. You're in tune with your body. You're, again, looking at the clouds, kind of in tune with what's going on around you. And it's a little bit meditative. It's a different meditation than kind of sitting there breathing or whatnot. And usually I'm not sitting here talking to a camera. I'm kind of focused on, doing some sort of box breathing or just trying to focus on the in and out of my breath and use that to get through the 6 minutes. And after that, I go in and start my day. In terms of how I sort of structure my plunges, I'll generally do these after a run. I, come back from my run, I'll do a little stretching. Sometimes I'll eat. I'll go take a quick shower. I'll throw on that goofy robe that I started out this video in, just so I don't kind of use too many towels. And then I'll come down here and jump in. And the reason I shower before is to keep this water, somewhat unfunky. It's been about 2 weeks, and I have my other 2 boys using the plunge as well. So it's probably due for a clean in the near future, but with the filter system that I'll show you and the ozone and everything, that seems to keep it fairly clean. But I shower to kind of take all the funk off, plop myself in here. My timer just went off actually, so I'm a little bit over my 6 minutes, but I'll pop out, put my robe on, then I kind of towel off and get dressed and go about my day. So hopefully that's kind of giving you the why and the benefits of the plunge. And now let's go into some of the things I learned building this sucker, and I'll walk you through some of the systems and setup that I used. In terms of the chiller, I use this Active Aqua brand 1/4 horsepower chiller. This seems to be the one most people recommend. And kind of the debate folks have is, should you get a 1/4 horsepower, a 1/2 horsepower, something meatier? If you're going to use this Grizzly cooler, a 1/4 horsepower seems to do pretty well. I had this set up when it was kind of the dog days of summer down here in the dirty south, and it kept the water at 46 degrees pretty reasonably. So I think that 1/4 horsepower sizing is fine. The other thing you'll see people debate is, do you get some, high quality, super fancy chiller? There's some that are commercial grade, that are made in the USA, that are a couple grand a pop. This guy was about $600 when I got him. And my thinking was I could get 3 of those for the price of a super fancy high quality one. So I don't think I'll go through 3 of those in that time period. The other extreme is people will get an Alibaba type chiller sent over from China. And I did see a lot of people get those where they weren't properly assembled, or they had leaks, or had the wrong plug installed, or just had a lot of problems that I didn't want to deal with to save a couple $100. Now the filtration system basically consists of this Danner pump down here. I got the 1200 gallon per minute model. So this sucks water out of the bottom of the plunge, pumps it up to here, and the majority of the water will go through this GE household filter. This is a pretty typical standard whole house water filter. You can put whatever filter element in there that you want. There's probably a dozen different styles available. And alternatively, the water will end up going through this upper path and through this device, which is called a Venturi. That kind of spins the water around and pulls some air in there. You can hear the plunge bubbling in the background. And I have that connected to this hose, which is connected to an ozone generator. Ozone in this case essentially acts as a cleaning agent, so it's sort of a reactive chemical that goes in and theoretically kills all the bad stuff and keeps the plunge clean. And that runs for about 45 minutes each night, and I have that set up through that automated power strip. So majority of my water will run through the household filter. Some of it will come up here through this Venturi. At around midnight, this guy is sucking in ozone. Throughout the day, it's just kind of sucking in air, which makes that bubbling noise. That ozonated water comes back. Everything meets up here through the filter, runs back down, and cruises on into the chiller, which is that Active Aqua guy. You can see kind of some of the bubbles that have been injected into there, and then that just dumps right back into the top of the plunge. Plumbing wise, a couple tips. I do really like this bulkhead. It was pretty easy to install. You basically just need a hole saw, and I've got that linked in my shopping list. And then you kind of screw this guy on. The other nice thing is there's a little adapter that goes on the inside that'll let you connect this to a garden hose. So if I want to drain the plunge, I just hook the garden hose up, leave the pump running, and can basically dump this sucker out. I also use the existing drain. There's a little Grizzly adapter you can get that's got a screw fitting on the end, and you can use some PVC pipe fittings and ultimately use that to connect in. So you only have to drill one hole in your fancy new cooler. Other plumbing related tips. This Active Aqua chiller uses British pipe threads for these fittings right here. So the common threads you'll find in the US are NPT, which I think is National Pipe Thread Standard or something. The British is close enough that you could force the NTP onto here, but it'll tend to leak. So I ordered some British pipe thread fittings, linked in the shopping list, and just go pretty heavy on the Teflon tape around these threads. And you can see there really aren't any leaks there. There is a little condensation dripping down, but these guys are pretty secure and ended up working out pretty well. Generally speaking, on the plumbing, you're actually not gluing these things together. It's what's called PVC cement, which is a bit of a misnomer. It's actually kind of a solvent, so it creates a chemical weld and kind of breaks down the plastic and causes those two things to bond together. If you've never dealt with PVC cement or done any kind of plumbing work before, I would cut a few sections of pipe and do some samples, try things out a little bit. I think the key is to make sure you get a good twist when you put things together. So you put this purple primer stuff on, which you can kind of see here, the purplish. Again, most of the water dripping here is due to condensation, although I do have a little minor leak at this guy, which I'll talk about in a second. But you put that purple primer on that kind of cleans things up, and then you put the PVC cement on. And as you put two fittings together, give them a little twist. That'll kind of spread the PVC cement around. That'll make sure you've got a good bond, and then hold it together for about 20 Mississippis or some sort of count like that. And that'll make sure that you get a good solid bond. And again, it actually kind of chemically dissolves the plastic and causes those two plastic sections to bond together at a chemical level. So once you've got one of these guys put together, you're not really getting it apart without cutting it and replacing things. So don't be shy on cutting things, kind of dry fitting, practice making sure everything's the way you want it before you actually put the cement on. Do be aware that when you put the cement on, it kind of acts like a lubricant a little bit when you're putting two pieces together. So you may do things perfectly when you dry fit it, and then when you go and actually use the cement and put them together, you'll find you're a quarter inch shorter than when you dry fit. So just be aware of that as you put things together. So probably the most interesting feature is these LED string lights that I added to the plunge. So you can see in there, it's basically just your kind of generic set of LED string lights that you'd find on Amazon or whatever. I'll put links below to everything, obviously. The only key nuance here is making sure you've got something that's IP68 rated. And that includes both the string lights themselves and then this cable back here. I had to get a special IP68 rated waterproof cable. It's got a little bit of a meatier connector that you can see on there than what comes out of the box. And that essentially makes sure that your lights don't get ruined by the water. And what I did to mount them was I used some Flex Seal product that I'll link to down in the list of all the parts I used. And it kind of worked okay. You got to hold it on there a little longer than I'd hoped. And I 3D printed some little bridges that you can kind of see in there that go in the gap in the plunge and keep the light strips, sort of attached. You can see it pulled off from some of there. I think ultimately I'm going to need to do something a little better. Maybe I'll try VHB tape or something like that to hold the lights in. What's kind of neat is those lights are then connected through this cable back to a little light controller that uses a software package that's free and open source called WLED. As with everything, I'll link to this in the list of parts I used, but you can turn this on and off either through a smartphone app, or in my case, I have this connected to the Home Assistant automation software that I use to run my old house. And I also have this power strip, which I think is made by TP-Link, connected to my automation system. And you can see each of those outlets has a little button to turn it on and off, and I can control those through the automation system as well. So I have a routine set up that will automatically turn on the ozone generator, which is this little box over here, each night, and that kind of cleans the plunge out. I can also turn the cooler on and off and turn the pump on and off. So I kind of have complete control of my cold plunge system from my automation software. Now, dumping yourself into what is essentially a meat locker isn't exactly a spa-like experience, but I do like this little teak wood platform there, mostly so you can drip off and you kind of drip onto the floor without standing in a puddle of your own water after you come out of the plunge. That's nice, since I'll usually try and shower before I do my plunge. So I'm coming down here, getting the plunge done, and then putting on my flippy floppies and heading back up to get dressed. So I don't want to track water all through the house. So that's kind of the thinking behind this platform. And then this bench I generally use to put a towel on, put my robe on while I'm in the plunge, and it's probably more of a stuff holder than something where I kind of sit down and enjoy the fact that I'm in my hot garage sitting next to a meat locker. I'll probably add a hook or something at some point, My wife is going to jazz this up a little bit since she's more effective than I am at making things beautiful. I'm more the making things functional element of our dynamic duo. And the final kind of key accessory I'd grab is, this is like a 12-inch net. It's got a little bit of a short handle. I wish this handle had a hook on the end so I could hang it off the side of the plunge off these handles here. But you definitely want something like this since you'll get little pieces of hair, you'll get, some bugs and floaters in here. And this guy just makes it easy to give things a little scoopy and kind of clean things up and keep your water clean between plunges. I haven't yet refilled this. This water's about a week and a half old, but I would generally expect to get about 2 weeks between water changes, kind of based on, the water's current clarity. And, obviously you want to make sure it's not smelling funky or there's anything funky growing in there, but it's looking pretty good at this point. Hopefully you found some useful tips and tricks and can apply those to your own DIY cold plunge. If you have anything cool or any questions, as usual, drop those in the comments. I should also say that if you're starting any sort of personal wellness, health type of journey, you should consult your doctor, witch doctor or otherwise. Consult your lawyer, consult an attorney. I am a big dumb animal on the internet, and you probably shouldn't listen to me for any sort of advice on anything other than this little tidbit, and that's that you should be well, continue to live your best life, and keep on chilling whether or not it's in a cold plunge. Big Heavy, wishing you peace.